Just a few days ago, I mentioned how important it was for Warner Brothers to present James Gunn's Superman movie as a huge win for the studio, especially when you compare it to Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. And ever since I brought it up, it seems like there's been a rather desperate attempt to push this very narrative within the mainstream media, likely due to an aggressive PR push coming from Warner Brothers themselves, because their studio has so much riding on James Gunn's movie, and it's almost too big to fail, at least the way they see it. That's why it's no coincidence that you've probably already seen several well-timed articles in recent days celebrating James Gunn's Superman as the most successful Superman ever released, putting to shame any other Superman movies, especially Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. Now, the big problem I have is that if you actually pay attention to the fine print, Gunn's Superman has only done decently at the domestic box office, and not even at the international one, where Superman is actually performing quite poorly right now. Not to mention that most of these very gun-friendly articles that I keep seeing, they don't actually bother to adjust previous Superman movies for inflation so that we can actually compare them. And the reason they're not doing that is that they're going to great lengths to paint Gunn's Superman in a very positive way rather than in an unflattering way. And every time I bring this up, I seem to get a lot of pushback for it. And the main argument I keep hearing is, well, why don't you also adjust the production budgets for inflation and not just the box office? And you know what? In order to help resolve all the confusion and the gaslighting that we're seeing from the media these days, I will attempt to address everybody's concerns. But before we dive in, if it's not too much trouble, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. As an independent news source, I always do my best to bring people different angles of a story, and any type of support I could get would be greatly appreciated.
Do it.
What we're going to do today is look at all these past Superman movies, adjusted for inflation, and see exactly how James Gunn's movie ranks amongst them. And then we'll be able to see if James Gunn's Superman is really the most successful Superman movie of all time. Now, let's take a look. This is a list that I've made showing the different Superman movies that have ever received a theatrical release, all with budgets and box office proceeds adjusted for inflation. Now, clearly you can see that without a doubt, the number one Superman movie ever made is actually Richard Donner's 1978 Superman, the movie, because if you adjust its budget, it cost $271 million to make, and it generated an adjusted box office take of $1.484 billion. So this one is the undisputed winner. To be fair, it's not all that surprising, because much like Star Wars, this movie was considered so groundbreaking when it came out. It was the first time that a comic book movie was taken so seriously by the people making it that until today, it's considered a blueprint for anybody trying to make some type of comic book movie featuring any type of origin story, and rightfully so. Next, in second place, we have Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman, with an adjusted budget of $353 million and an adjusted worldwide box office of $1.17 billion. Now, to be fair, since this is a movie also featuring Batman, I'm willing to ignore it, even though if nothing else, it does prove that Snyder wasn't necessarily the huge failure that Warner Brothers and the media always seem to imply. It doesn't mean you have to like his movies. I certainly have my criticism towards him and some of his creative choices. I'm just saying that on a business level, maybe his audience wasn't as wide as the type that went to see those MCU movies at the time, but he did have an audience, for whatever that's worth. And to be fair, the studio didn't exactly give Snyder much leeway when it came to executing his original vision for DC, because they wanted an instant Avengers setup to compete with Disney's MCU at the time. And with all of that being said, in third place on the list is Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. It has an adjusted budget of $311 million and an adjusted worldwide box office take of $924 million. And if you actually adjust his domestic box office, Snyder, at the moment, is doing much better than Gunn is doing right now. And this is where I think Warner Brothers and Gunn have the biggest issue, because if Gunn can't perform better than Snyder, then rehiring and then refiring Henry Cavill and firing Gal Gadot and then bringing back Ben Affleck and firing him again, all that weird stuff doesn't really seem all that justified if the guy they brought in can't outdo this other guy that they seem to dislike so much. And again, doesn't matter sentiments here. We're talking business, not feelings. And I suspect that Warner and Gunn are trying to avoid all of these kind of narratives that I'm telling you, and that's why they absolutely want to say that James Gunn is the best thing that ever happened. In reality, though, James Gunn's Superman, adjusted for inflation at this moment in time, is ranked in 7th place out of 9, only actually beating both Superman 3 and Superman 4 at the adjusted box office. Now, Superman 3 is a movie that I don't actually hate, but it was already a diminishing return when it came out in 1983, and it was on the silly side. 1987 Superman 4 was a complete production disaster where the studio that produced it had gone bankrupt while they were filming it. So on the one hand, they may have made this movie for rather cheap, but on the other hand, it performed rather poorly at the box office. And this is basically James Gunn's big achievements, that on this list, he is somehow better than Superman 3 or 4 when you adjust his numbers for inflation. And you know what? If I were him, I wouldn't be bragging right now. I don't know how everything's going to look at the end of his run. Maybe without any adjustments, he'll be able to claim that he somehow got something close to Snyder or a little bit above what he did. But you know what? This is really a poor man's win. This isn't the reason he was hired. They brought him in here to create a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and this Superman movie was supposed to be a grand slam, home run, slam dunk, and he didn't do it. And people can get mad at me all they want. If he can't have a good worldwide box office take, and his domestic isn't even beating all these other movies when you adjust for inflation, I don't think that this is a major win here. It's more of a flop. And I understand that people like Gunn and they like his movies, and I myself have liked some of Gunn's previous movies. I didn't like his Superman, but whatever I like and don't like is really irrelevant here. The bottom line is, what do the numbers say? And the numbers say that James Gunn and Warner Brothers are going to do a whole song and dance here to try to convince you of different things, but I don't really see that happening when I look at the actual facts. Now, can James Gunn's movie still make more at the box office? Sure. I still think it can make like $100 or $150 million, but I don't think that his movie is performing better than Man of Steel. And if you want to keep receiving these type of more honest box office reports from an independent news source like myself, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really help my channel. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.